I'm just going to introduce the panel and we'll crack straight on. So please give up for your panel and your moderator, Kirsty House. Massive round of applause.
Hello. Yay. So I'm winging this, but that's fine. That's confidence, isn't it? So I am going to introduce my panel, whose names I have already forgotten. Vicky, a round of applause for Vic, please. And Jane, a round of applause for Jane. And a round of applause for Naz. So I got an email from Frankie, who was one of the amazing organisers of this event a few weeks ago, saying, Kirsty, can you... Hold on, I'm just going to check. Toby, we're not missing anybody else on the panel, are we? Have I excluded someone? That would be awkward. We're good. I can sit here then. So I got an email a couple of weeks ago from Frankie, one of the organisers of this incredible event, and said, Kirsty, can you chair a panel where we talk about confidence? For those of you who don't know me, I'm a confidence trainer. I run confidence workshops. I do free or donation-only workshops for women to try and help level the professional playing field. So it is something that I know a bit about and I'm also quite passionate about. So I am delighted to be moderating today. So what we will do is I will first ask the panelists to just give you their name and maybe just a bit of their experience, if that's okay. And then also maybe just, if you don't mind, if you can just say how you feel when you think about public speaking or being heard in a meeting or any kind of scenario, the kind of feelings that are elicited when that comes to mind. Is that cool? Any takes on who would like to go first? Yes, Jane, thank you. Oh, you've got a mic.
Oh, okay. So I'm Jane. I run a digital and creative agency called Zeal. I also have some equity in a number of portfolio of different businesses. Confidence, I would say I am naturally quite a confident person, but that doesn't mean that at this moment in time, when I'm looking at loads of people staring at me, wanting me to say something insightful and brilliant, I'm also not shifting it a little bit. But for me, confidence is about doing something that makes you feel, and just doing it anyway. And that level of what makes you feel like that will differ for every person. So it could be singing live on stage at Wembley, which I think I'd be awesome at, but would also make me feel like that. Or it could just be speaking up in a meeting, or it could be jumping off a cliff. And I have a real thing where I encourage all of my members of staff to do something that makes them scared. Because for me, the closer you are to dying, that's when you're like truly living. I'm also an adrenaline junkie, I should probably mention that as well. So maybe not a dying thing, but I think everybody should do things that make them scared, because every time you're out of your comfort zone, that's where you kind of grow.
Great, thank you so much, Jane.
I'm Victoria, I'm the PR manager at Journey Further. So I think being in PR, you have to have kind of, I guess, a certain level of confidence. I wouldn't say I'm like an overly confident person, but there's a lot of opportunities, I guess, in marketing and PR and a lot of the industries that we all work in where there's so much that you can get out of just putting yourself forward a little bit and putting yourself in those situations and having confidence. About 6 months ago, I helped build the PR team at Journey Further, so that was, something really new. There was a lot of kind of responsibility and things like that, and we had to build a team, get new clients and things like that. So there's been a lot of situations over kind of like the last 6 months where really had to focus on kind of putting myself in those situations and being confident in those situations as well.
Amazing, thank you. Naz.
Hi everyone, I'm Nazish, and I work in digital marketing for the last 10 years. My background's been in digital marketing. I did a business and management degree and sort of worked in digital marketing for the last 10 years. So more recently I moved away from acquisition and paid search into a more generic role in financial services. And this is sort of my first opportunity to speak so publicly. In my head I sort of imagined I'll work my way up a bit, sort of do something smaller. So I imagined stage 4 to be a lot smaller than it actually is. But I guess for me, sort of living and working in Bradford in a reasonably diverse multicultural city, so my experiences has been quite mixed. So I worked with lots of women, and in particular a lot of women from South Asian or Muslim backgrounds. And I guess as I sort of become more interested in digital marketing, I've travelled to conferences, and that's when I sort of it really highlights to me the lack of diversity in terms of women in digital marketing, but also from different backgrounds, different ethnicities. And so I guess this is why I'm here, to basically say that there is plenty of women that are from a different background to do. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing. So I guess a question I want to take to you is, you all kind of said, I in work, I find myself in these situations where I either, I run this business and I encourage my team to do these things, or I'm trying to champion diversity and all of these great things. So I guess my question to you is, how do you get yourself to that point where you're willing to take those risks?
I always focus on the positive. So instead of, you can focus massively on the negative things and how nervous you'll be and how, what could be the worst outcome. But if you focus on what could be the best outcome, whether that's talking somewhere and, you're raising your profile, or whether that's just going into a new business pitch or asking a question in a meeting room or something like that, really focus on the positives and what you'll achieve from it and what you'll get out of it, instead of kind of thinking or dwelling on what could happen or what could go wrong or what could be bad. I think that's the first step.
I kind of do the opposite. I set up disaster scenes in my mind where I'm like, what is the worst that can happen? I'll fall off the stage, my head will bleed open, and then I'll be like, well, it's probably not likely that'll happen. But if I prepare myself for the worst, then actually when it's because it's never ever as bad as you can imagine in your mind. It's like when you watch horror films, the scariest horror film is when you don't see the monster that's chasing you, because some people are scared of spiders, some people are scared of clowns, some people are scared of little girl ghosts. They are the scariest. So you put that vision into the film. So I think sometimes if you kind of go, it's just never going to be that bad. And then sometimes as well, it's just doing things more often. So I once was at a pitch in Scotland, super serious, boardroom table. The pitch where you go in and they're like, impress me. They're like, make it uncomfortable for you. And I did the best pitch of my life. I was sitting down, I was patting myself on the back. They were loving me, it was brilliant. And I was so carried away with my own brilliance that when I leant over to turn the PowerPoint off, I was on a wheelie office chair and the wheels slid out from under me. And it kind of happened in slow motion, but at one point I was like, my face is touching carpet. It's actually touching carpet. I am 100% on the floor. And I just was like, oh, this is the worst that can happen. And then they just carried on. So I had to get up and say, I just fell off my chair, literally fell off my chair. And then, it went great, because also we're all human. So whatever you're scared of, if I was scared of today, saying something stupid or, not, everybody has done that before in their times. And I think to remember that the people that you're dealing with are human, and generally nice people will, let you off if you fall off your chair, or, they'll help you up. So I think just recognising that everybody's been in the same position that you have, whatever it is you're scared of.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, I think it's been, so my background's been in marketing, and I'm really confident in my experience and my skill set, and I'm also always actively trying to learn. So in terms of what gives me confidence is the fact that I've got that background. So I mean, despite that, I feel like sometimes there's a lot of people in the workplace. Sometimes it's your colleagues, sometimes it's your manager, sometimes if you're going for roles that maybe is a step up, they might not see that in you, and I think that really motivates me to actually prove them wrong. So I think for me it's always been that case of, I know what I believe in and what I'm capable of, but actually I'm going to prove you wrong. And even though you may not have given me that opportunity, in your team or in your business, actually I can prove that I can do it, and I'll do it, and I'll show you how I can do it. So that's what's helped me.
That's really nice, thank you. That was loud. It's quite a similar thing you all said. You kind of sometimes find yourself in a situation where you feel like people are expecting you to not do that well, and you almost use that as an energy. I just want to add briefly to something that you mentioned, that cortisol is our main stress hormone. It's that creates our nerves and our fears and our anxiety. And how we construe a situation, how we think something is going to be, will make us release more cortisol or less, depending. So if you have something coming up where you're like, that's scary, and you perceive it to be scary, and you construe it as scary, and you think about it as a threat, then your body will react by releasing more cortisol, and it will become that. But the great thing is it also works the other way. So if, like you said, if you perceive something as an opportunity, as, you know, a way to impress your boss or win the pitch or whatever it is, then your body will respond by increasing your testosterone and lowering your cortisol, which gives you confidence and assertiveness. So absolutely, the way we think about things and perceive things has a huge impact on how we can perform. So I guess the question I want to ask you is, we live in a world that is chaotic, and we live in a world where perhaps we're constantly holding ourselves up to our peers. So how do we know when to push ourselves and do something that scares us, or when to appreciate things aren't for us and to focus on self-care? How do we kind of identify what that boundary is for you guys? Sorry, it's a bit of a doozy, sorry.
I don't know, I think it's different personality types as well. So I will always, well, not always, but I will mostly choose the former. So like I said, I like doing things that scare me, because that's when I get adrenaline and I feel like I'm alive. And for me, that could be jumping out of a plane or doing something crazy, but for somebody else, it could just be going for a job that they, you know, probably wouldn't have gone for before. It is important to the whole kind of self-care thing, and I think you're the only one that can judge that. And you know, we do live in busy lives, and we do have to take time for ourselves and all of that. But I think it's also knowing when you do need to push yourself a bit harder. So as much as you need to listen to yourself, say, okay, I need to slow down a bit and I need to chill out, and maybe that's not for me because I've tried it 4 times and I keep, you know, not succeeding. And there's no shame in that. I've had a couple of businesses that have failed, and I've tried and I'm like, it's just not working, and I hate to give up. So I'm the kind of person that will still keep going. But there's no harm in going, that's actually not for me, because then I'm going to focus my time on things that are working. And I think it's hard because you want that balance of being the kind of person that doesn't give up and keeps going. And we're all told inspirational Instagram quotes to, you know, reach for the moon and all that. But if you don't want to go into space, there's no point, you know, going down that avenue. So it's kind of knowing what you want to do, and that's not easy either. You know, like it's not always, you don't always know what you want to do with the rest of your life. It's a long time.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of like, I guess what I interpreted from what you just said then was being comfortable with failure. And being comfortable with things, perhaps you won't be perfect every time, and you can learn and you can grow, and that's like a route to confidence for you.
Yeah, I think it's then what you take out of that. So if you do fail, turn it into something, instead of focusing on the fact, oh crap, I've really failed at that, I really messed up, thinking, what can I take from that, what can I do better next time, and maybe even just then taking small steps, so you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, but not too far that, you know, if it is a big impact or something, you know, you just kind of, it's small wins, isn't it? So you kind of, you know, you're pushing yourself out of what you know your boundaries are slightly, but not too far, so that you completely, like, freak yourself out, I guess.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh, sorry, I have this mic.
I
I'm
know,
so sorry.
give her this mic.
She will not give it up.
So for me, I think it's always been about putting yourself outside of your comfort zone, like you mentioned. So with my career, what I've done is I used to work in a business. I was there for 4 years. I knew the business inside out. And I got really good at it, and I really enjoyed it, but I really wanted to progress. And so for me, it was a case of how do I do that. So what I did was I decided to challenge myself and take on some short-term contracts. So you go into a business for maybe 9 months, 12 months, and you learn the business. And I've gone from sort of retail to financial services, back to retail again. And each time it's been a new business model, a new set of objectives, learning different processes, different people. And the more often you do that, where you have to sort of start from scratch, every 6 months, 9 months, the quicker you are at learning and sort of being reactive to change. But also with that, you become in charge of change as well. So rather than being passive and saying, I've been here 6 months and now we've got a new manager, we've got a change of my role's changed. You're in control and you're in charge, and I think over time what that does is it makes you more tenacious, it makes you more resistant to change, and I think it grows you without even realising.
Yeah, amazing. So just through the experience and the practice is how you can develop it. So do you guys have any... So imagine you're going into a scenario that you feel very daunted by. Do you have any specific things that you do to try and regulate your nerves and kind of mitigate them having a negative impact on how you perform?
Tequila.
Good.
Just had a couple of shots. Again, I think, I don't know. Maybe there is. I did listen to a really good TED talk about power posing, how it reduces cortisol, and I haven't done it because I think, imagine just someone, like, it would be a bit strange. But there is studies that does change the hormones in your bodies, and, maybe that's something to try. But I use humour as a defence mechanism for sure. So, whilst you're over there, you're waiting, you kind of self-depreciate or, just joke around. But, yeah, I think... I don't know, I bet there's breathing exercises and that kind of thing you could do, but I don't really do any of them. So I'm probably bad answer. I don't know.
You have
Tips.
to know what works for you, I think. And because it's not going to, there'll be certain things like you're saying that, it's just not going to help you out at all. So I think just kind of, for me, to feel comfortable in a situation, and if I was going to do a big talk, I would have to be fully prepared for it, because if I wasn't, I didn't believe in what I was saying, and I didn't feel comfortable, I would just completely mess up, and that confidence would just completely go. So it's just kind of being prepared and believing in why you're there, what you're doing, I guess. But also, a kind of side tip for me is music always works for me. So if I'm driving to somewhere, or just before you're going on to do something, or you go into a meeting or something, just put maybe some favourite music on, or something that just kind of gets you a bit more upbeat, and then stops you thinking about the negative things before it.
So for me, I think I built up public speaking over time, and so the way I did this was, so in many businesses there's not opportunities to stand up and do presentations, it's business as usual. So I took the opportunity in trading meetings, so at the end where it's like any other business, I just put my hand up and say, right, just to let you know, in digital marketing we did this, this and this. Nobody cared, nobody was interested, but what that allowed me to do was on the spot kind of be proactive, think about what I could communicate. And I think over time, sort of in the more senior you get, you're stopped by directors and senior people, so what's going on, where are we with this? And I think if you've sort of done that over time, prepared yourself, you can sort of respond quickly rather than stammering and so on. But going back to the pose, I think I really believe in that. It's called Superwoman pose. You might have seen me doing that a bit earlier on, and I really do think it really works. So Google it and practice it. I think it works.
I am the biggest advocate of a power pose. I was doing a talk on the main stage this morning, and I was behind like this. So it's Amy Cuddy who did the TED talk. So go away and watch it. Also, laughter reduces cortisol. So using humour is a great mechanism to manage nerves. And clearly. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go off-piste momentarily, because why not? Are there any questions in the audience? Do any of you have anything that you would like to know? Any questions for any of us up here specifically? Great. Shout quite loud.
How do you deal with, so when I'm speaking publicly, I might rush my words, or I might mumble, that kind of thing. How do you get in the right frame of mind so you're not doing that so visibly people wouldn't necessarily know that you were nervous?
Great. I'll just say and just in case. So that's a question on pace, how you can slow yourself down if you're nervous and you end up going really, really quickly. My professional forte. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say training. Definitely training. And I think there are certain roles where the other thing is we're talking a lot about public speaking, which is obviously an obvious reason for confidence, but you can be successful and do amazing things without always being on the stage and kind of shouting about it. So that's something that I'm quite passionate about. We have people at Zeal who are all sorts of different personalities, and some of the really quiet ones who, if you said, can you do some public speaking, they would be, no. We don't force people to. We'll find different ways of getting their point across, but I've been in some really good public speaking courses. I've been on some terrible ones as well. I think find the right trainer, get some good feedback on what you're looking to do. There are definitely exercises. You can touch your fingers, you can slow down. I used to get the dreaded red rash. Don't know if anybody's but literally, and there's no hiding that. You cannot hide it. And remember when I first went to pitches as an exec, and I would feel it coming on, and then because you can feel it coming on, it comes on more, and it's just a vicious circle of just rashy. Nobody likes that. So I think as well, don't worry about it. Don't then focus on it, because a lot of the time, if you saw somebody getting like that in front of you in a pitch, you wouldn't be like, well, she must be shit, she's got a rash. You'd be like, she's nervous, so she cares. So she's passionate about it. So I think as well, don't focus on it too much. But yeah, I have done training, and I do training with my staff about it. And I think just practice and practice and practice. If it's on your own at home in a mirror, if it's with a small group of friends. There was one, I went to a really good personal impact seminar where you filmed each other. That was horrific. I don't like getting my photo taken, let alone being filmed, but watching it back on your phone, and there's loads of stuff. So I think, get somebody that will come in and train you, or you can go on, there's loads of seminars and stuff like that. I mean, you do it, so there you go. Yeah.
Pace, I'll just say something quickly if that's okay with you guys. Pace is something I have always struggled with, because I naturally am quite a quick talker. I've had awful instances where I've been speaking at conferences and people would be subtitling what I would be saying, and they'd be like, no clue, cannot, don't even know. And the only thing that worked for me was somebody said to me a few years ago, speak so slowly that to you it sounds ridiculous. And so over time I slowly started going, well, and in my head I'm like, I'm talking but if you're naturally a really quick communicator, trying to get to the point where it feels like you're going too slow and it feels weird, that's when for an audience it's probably about right. And again, like these guys have said, it's just practice, just repetition and practice, and slowly over time being patient with yourself and building in that kind of that mechanism to be able to slow down. Any other thoughts on that?
It's just the simple things like breathing as well. For me, the first talk that I did, I had to watch it back on video, and I was cringing so bad. I don't think I breathed for the first 3 minutes, and then I just took this massive deep breath in, and then the pace from there was fine. So maybe even thinking about just the simple things about taking a breath once in a while will naturally slow you down a little bit.
So I'll give you a tip that my previous marketing director at Borison's shared with me. So when he was made director, he was sent to a theatre school to prep him for public speaking. And so one of the things I mentioned to him was, in my role I'd like to progress and like to practice my public speaking. And he said, right, okay, so book some time with me and, half an hour, and bring a little straw. So one of the things that I've got is I'm quite softly spoken, so I don't really project my voice. So he said, bring a small straw. So I brought this little straw, and he was like, right, okay, so this is a trick that they taught him. So have your speech ready and put the straw in your mouth. I don't have one with me because I didn't do this this time around because I had a mic. But through the straw, read out your speech, and it's going to sound really ridiculous because it's through a straw. But what that does is it opens up your lungs, and it really helps you to, it practices your lungs to project your voice. So do that a couple of times in a different room, not in front of the stage, in front of everyone. Do that several times. And the other thing is read the speech out, but with your tongue stuck to your roof of your mouth. So it's going to sound a bit like this. And just do that for the entire speech. Read it out a couple of times. And then when you actually come to speak, it loosens your mouth up. It actually helps you project your voice naturally. So maybe about 15-20 minutes before any presentation, I found myself doing this, and it really makes a difference.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I have a quick question. Am I meant to be keeping time, Toby?
No, we've got maybe 1 minute left.
1 minute left, okay. Does anybody have a question in the last 1 minute? Yes.
This isn't about public speaking, but say if you're in a meeting, what tips have you guys got about if you feel like you've been shut down after you've spoken and how you come back to that?
Absolutely. So how to kind of manage it if you feel like you're getting shut down in a meeting situation. Wonderful question. Thank you.
Yeah, that is a really good question, and that has happened to me a few times, and I'm sure has happened to everybody. I think understanding why you have. Is it because they haven't heard you, they don't respect you, just something else has happened around the room? So I guess understanding the reason why. And going to the kind of gender thing, I have been in meetings where I've been introduced as the CEO and there's a male in the room, and then we're talking and I'm asking a question and he's answering to the guy, and and then it's really awkward. I've also been in the other situation where I'm interviewing somebody and the line manager is there and they're asking questions and they're just answering to me, and I'm like, that's also really awkward. In the gender thing, I will always stop the meeting and say, just to let you know, I'm not sure if you are aware, but we haven't made eye contact and I'm the person that's asking the question, I'm being the decision maker. I've only had to do it a couple of times because he really pissed me off. Sometimes I will let it go, but I have said that, and they always go, oh. And actually, sometimes I just didn't realise, like it was just a whatever. And I always think, well, they'll probably think twice about that next time they do speak to, women and men in the same room. But I think knowing when you can jump in, because you don't want to kind of jump in over somebody else. So it's listening to the pace of the conversation to find a pause. And then it's making sure that when you do speak, you are heard. So again, going back to, even if it's not public speaking, it still could be meetings. You don't want to suddenly go, hello, but then also if you go, hi, you're not going to be heard. So finding the right place to do it, finding the right kind of, not temperature, what's it called? Volume, find the right volume to do it, and then also making sure what you're saying is relevant, because also if you're the person that keeps chirping up in meetings with the relevant comments, people are going to stop listening to you. So, but the meeting thing, I always say to people that come to Zeal and junior members of staff, try and make it a mission to go to, at the meeting, just say one thing. Start with just one thing. Doesn't have to be groundbreaking or amazing, but then actually when you've done that, the next time you go in, you might say two things, and then by the end of it, you're running the whole meeting.
I think it's a bit sad that you find yourself in those situations, because you shouldn't be in those situations where you feel like you can't voice your own opinion and that you have been shut down. It's really hard. I think maybe just as if you do feel like you're struggling to, because of the situations you've been in, I just kind of jot down a few notes. If you've got some key points that you don't feel like you've been able to raise, just jot them down, and then if you need to speak to someone at the end, or kind of send someone an email with those points in so that you're still being heard but you haven't had to shout over somebody or something like that, then that might be useful.
I've experienced something similar. I think it goes back to self-confidence and self-belief. So if you are being sidelined for whatever reason, or you feel like you're not being heard, so I've been client side, and sometimes agencies might not necessarily, think that I've got that experience. So if you're confident in yourself and you know your stuff, then make a point and try and make a point. So what this happened to me recently. Sort of agency was sort of telling me about SEO and everything, and just throw a few buzzwords at them. So what about your schema data markup, bossy? Have you thought about that? And it kind of stops them in their tracks, because they think actually you do know what you're talking about. And I think, schema markup is a good one.
Amazing, thank you. And I guess I will just end by saying, if there's anybody in this room who's ever felt themselves in a situation where they are being ignored or not heard because of any subconscious bias of the other person, get angry about that, because that is how you will get heard. So thank you so much. Thank you.